Welcome. I'm glad you're here. This is the Too Naughty to Nice podcast with Santa
There you go.
Corky. Joe, you've done a good job of bringing out who you found out who I was or getting to know me.
Mhm.
And you paint such a good picture around me that I know for a fact that our new podcast is going to be amazing because you know how to draw out some of the things inside me.
Yeah,
And
I'm excited.
the effect that I have made on your life since we met about Christmas.
I like how you did that. You want to just jump right into it then? We have Santa Corky here. Santa, I actually was gonna I meant to write out some questions, but then I decided that it may be a better conversation if we just free flow it. And I know that you've been wanting to have this type of conversation with or in front of your audience for a while. So instead of asking questions, just kind of let's jump right into it. Who are you? And why is the conversation that we're going to be having on this channel, so important? And what is that conversation about? But I guess just kick it off with who's Santa Corky? Who's Corky?
Right. Well,
And
yeah. And I would like to say that part of, I've been a Santa for 7 years. Now, this is going to be a podcast for probably adults. It's not meaning that it's R-rated or anything like that, but it's just, I've always wanted to kind of get out of character and tell my story because it's a different story. I want to use all kinds of words, but it's a story that from very naughty to very nice, and how that change started to happen. That's what this is going to be about. And I would like to my followers, subscribers, to know who's behind the red suit and how it happened and why it happened. And to me, it's destiny, absolutely pure destiny. And, it basically, to get started, I'm the child of a raped 14-year-old girl. And, that's the beginning. And my biological father was a massive alcoholic. And, he was only 20 years older than me, exactly. So back in the 50s, that's, I think the parents said, you're going to get married, because I think that was the thing they did back then for sure.
yeah,
And they tried for a while. And it was just a wreck between my mother getting beaten and me getting beaten all the time. I've never heard my dad say, I love you. I've never heard him. He said my name a couple of times, I think, but it was usually, hey, you. Hey, dummy, come here. He thought it was cute. And, but I always inspired to love him. I always wanted his attention. I worked hard for his attention. So that's kind of the beginning of what was going on. But in a way, I count it a blessing, Joe, because it made me who I am today. And part of living with him is that we moved every year of my grade school life. So in other words, first grade was at a different school, a different town. Second grade, different town. Third grade, different town. Fourth grade, he was a truck driver. Fifth grade,
okay.
different town. Through up until the sixth grade, when my mom finally said that's enough. So with that, the blessing is I learned to make friends very quickly and to watch the room.
So why is it that you look at your childhood and say, okay, the blessing is I learned how to make easy friends and I learned how to read the room? Why are those two things important to you? And why were those the things that you grabbed to? So those are, you could easily say you were in unfortunate situations, but why was it that you look back and say, hey, I can make friends because of this? Or why was it so easy for you to make friends, during that part of your life where most people probably would have isolated or felt that they didn't have any friends, yet alone the ability to make friends?
Well, Joe, good. I'm glad you brought that up. Because, Joe, I saw as an adult, I started looking at people blaming their parents, blaming
Okay.
life,
Yeah.
blaming their disease, blaming their unfortunate life, and not getting anywhere because they were so caught up in pointing fingers at what happened and
Yeah.
staying in the past and not going anywhere in the future. And I just see that that's just not going to work. You're not going anywhere. What's the things I could look at of what did my biological dad bring to me as a blessing? And I just started looking at some of that stuff. And I can make friends real easy. I'm a loving, caring kid at heart, you know, and I'm not going to let that person stop me from living life to the fullest and being who I truly am inside and what God created inside of me and what potential God put inside of me. And when I started realizing that, I started seeing my potential, you know, and not my handicap because my dad was like that. Fortunately, I had a very loving mother that loved me as much as she possibly could. And I was raised with four sisters. I was the oldest of five. Now, my mom,
Oh,
after
you-
my dad,
you're the you're the only boy?
I was, but my mom remarried and I have a half brother, a step brother.
Okay.
But I just watched my mom go through absolute hell over that. And I mean, to the point when I was 10 years old, I saw her attempt suicide with razor blades. Absolutely
Wow.
saw it happen in front of me because she blanked out. She checked out in her mind, didn't even realize I
Yeah.
was there and cut her wrist. And I
And
saw
what
that.
was your
That's
relationship
pretty
with your mom like? What kind of woman was she? What was that relationship like? And
very close.
what
No,
was
yeah, she was always there. She was she was a mom. I mean, we were raised on welfare, but if she wanted any extra money, she would. I remember her ironing curtains for the neighbor ladies, or she did
Mhm.
little home jobs to make extra money. And we went through times as a little family, my mom and sisters, where we ate the same food for 2 weeks, government food, or we had
Mhm.
very little for a long time. And I didn't always have I never really had fancy clothes, but I sometimes the soles on my boots would come off, and that was just they flopped. That's just the way it was. We were very, very poor, and I think that's a blessing too, because when I'm thankful for what I do have, and
Yeah.
I have a heart for other people in the same situation. You know,
And so at what point was your father out of your life, and who became your stepfather, and what was your relationship with your stepfather in comparison to the relationship you had with your father, or lack thereof?
absolutely, yeah, night and day. Um,
Okay.
my mom, about 2 years after my biological dad stepped away, she met Bob, and Bob had just gotten out of Vietnam, and they met at some honky tonk someplace. I mean, at that time, my mom was 25 years old when I was 10, you know.
Yeah.
Well, think of a 25-year-old woman with 4 or 5 kids and no man in the 60s,
Yeah.
you know. That's
Yeah.
yeah. And so my grandparents and my aunts and uncles, I remember them. They like going out Friday night. That's what kids do that are in their 20s, and that's what they were doing.
Mhm.
And then that's how my mom met my stepdad right out of Vietnam. And so he started hanging around, and he started being a father to me. right out of the chute. They got married really quick. They didn't date a
Hmm.
whole long time. They got married really quick. And man, at 12, 13, 14, he would take me out in the country and we'd shoot 22s and
Hmm.
drive the car. He let me drive the car on the old country roads. I mean, I was in kid heaven. I'd never had that happen. And he included me on stuff. He reprimanded me when I needed, because he came into my life at a perfect time. I was starting to tell my mom what to do. I'm
Hmm.
becoming close to a teenager, and I was, I wasn't very nice to her at times. I was being a typical knothead teenager almost. So with that, he was the most amazing man. He taught me how to work. He worked at the local mill there, and he didn't have a whole lot of money, so there were times he walked to work. We didn't have a car. My mom never ever drove. She never had her license ever.
Hmm.
So we usually rode with family or aunts and uncles to go places. So, but he went to work at the mill. He taught me how to work, and that man worked hard. He worked really hard, and that
What
taught
was
me
your
a
first
lot.
job?
He taught me a lot. My first job,
Hmm.
my first job was walking the wheat fields in Goldendale, Washington, picking rye out of the wheat fields, and it's like regular rye bread, but it was
Hmm.
wild in the wheat field. So I made 75 cents an hour as a kid, but you could work like
75 cents an hour.
yes, yeah, that was big money.
That is
The movies
quite the
were only
hourly. That's
25
quite
cents.
the hourly rate.
The movies were only 25 cents. Yeah, for 50 cents you could
How
get popcorn
how much
pop.
was gas?
Gas was 20 cents, 22 cents.
Wow, talk about inflation.
Right? But, back then the rent, I remember my mom saying the rent on our little 3-bedroom, 2-bedroom house. It was actually a 3-bedroom. I had the back room, but was $60 a month for a little. It was a small
Wow.
3-bedroom. Yeah. Was $60 a month. So, I mean, everything was relative back then.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
So so stepdad comes into the life. Where is your stepbrother at in relation to your stepfather? Is he already born, or like,
Oh,
how is your
then
stepbrother?
they had,
And
yeah, it wasn't long after that they had my little brother, and
oh, okay, half brother. There we go.
yeah, he's a half brother now. Yeah, he's my half brother, and it wasn't too long after he was born. A couple of years, three. Let's see. I remember him being 3. We had just moved back to where I live right now here in Yakima. So,
So
and then
what
I
was that
started
like?
high school.
So
Um,
what was it like to be the only boy and then get a little brother? Because so that
I
was
was,
kind of
I was,
my
I see. I was
yeah. So
excited to have a little brother because I was raised with girls all my life. I was
yeah.
super
So
excited to have a brother, and I
that's
loved him
exactly how I
dearly.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was the only boy with 3 girls, and I just remember crying, asking my mom, "Please give me a brother. I need
Right.
somebody. It's all these girls." And then I think when I was 8 years old, and my parents had been trying to have a boy since the child after me. So I have a brother who's in between me and my 2 sisters who passed away. He was a stillborn. So they had always been trying for another boy. They ended up with 2 more girls.
Uh huh.
And I think they just needed a little bit of extra pressure from me. So about 5 years after my baby sister was born, they had my little brother.
Right.
So I was excited to finally get, another boy in the family. So I wanted
Exactly.
to see how that went for you. Did you feel like you were did you get ganged up on by the girls? Did they beat you up? Was it like what was the
No.
childhood being the only boy? Because my
Yeah.
sisters beat me up all the
No.
time.
No. No. They couldn't. I was too overpowering. No. 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 I don't remember really fighting other than just normal sibling stuff. You know
Yeah.
how it worked is I got I have 3 sisters that are real within 2 years apart. Then I had 3 other siblings that were younger kids, so they were younger. So, but yeah, so we were a large family back in the mid 60s. Yeah, we were a large family back in the mid 60s or 60s, raised by a single mom with then a dad coming in to be a hero. And I was more than excited to have a little brother. But by then, I'm, 13 years older than he is, 12 years older at least than he is. And then it wasn't very long after that, I was off and gone in the service. I didn't get to see what he did in high school. I just heard about it and stuff as he was growing up, you know.
So prior to you leaving, and the way that your household and home were with your father, and then the change with your stepfather, what was your temperament like? So when I used to work with kids, you could see that they had things going on and they would act out. And a lot of times, your most misbehaved children had the most going on at home. So with all the things that you had going on at home, were you a misbehaved kid because of it? Did it not affect your behavior in school, or, like what was your, temperament, attitude, and personality like, while you were going through the things because of your father, and then did it change because of your stepfather, or by then were you kind of already off the rocker?
Well, I was a pretty good kid because I always felt like I had to take care of my mom. When my
Okay.
dad come around, I felt like I almost had to protect her in a way, or I was always so conscious of what she was thinking, how she was feeling. I was so in tune all the time. That's when you get to read the room, or you hear me say I always watch the room, because when
Yeah.
my biological dad walked into the house, it was totally different. I remember going and hiding, to get away from him because I knew he was drunk. So, and then he would pull me out from under the bed or the closet or something. But then I was always testing the temperature constantly when he was around, and seeing how my mother was feeling and doing. So I was a pretty good, all around pretty good kid. I got in trouble one time. Me and a friend of mine were breaking into a couple of cars, but that's about it. We thought we were being cool at 12 years old, and getting, crawling out the window at night. And, in that little town I lived in, you could go out there and it wasn't unsafe at all compared to what it is
Yeah.
nowadays. But I never
So
got into much trouble at all.
so you were in the service. What did you do in the service? What branch of the military were you in? Were you drafted? Did you choose to go? Without, I know those types of conversations are different for everybody. My grandfather fought in Nam, and not a conversation that he would ever have. So if you want to have that kind of conversation, what was it like? What were you doing? How long
Oh
were you
no,
there?
exactly. Remember, my stepdad was in Vietnam. So
Hmm.
he told me, he said, son, if you go into the Coast Guard or the Navy or Air Force, he said, let's go into something besides the Marines and the Army. Let's go see what you can do. But
Hmm.
before that, I had a very good friend in high school. Him and I were inseparable. There's a whole story behind that. But he got kicked out of school. I wasn't doing well in school. I was a senior and I was 11 credits behind. I wasn't going to graduate. So he gets kicked out of school. His dad says, you're either going the service because you're not staying here. And so he decided he wanted to go in the service. And we both loved to fish so much and hunt so much. We decided to find someplace we could be fishing if we're going in the service. Isn't that weird? So my stepdad said, I'll help you get into a car if you go into something besides that's going to send you off to Vietnam. So of course, we both applied and got to go in the Coast Guard. So we were
Okay.
automatically went to boot camp in California, and from boot camp there, we got onto an icebreaker in Kodiak, Alaska. And That's
And how
yeah,
long were you in the Coast Guard?
4 years. Four
Okay.
years. Before that, I had met my first wife. So that's a whole nother story. My high school
Okay, wait, yeah,
girlfriend.
yeah. Okay, yeah, so let's
That's
go
what
back to high school then. So you said you were 11 credits short from graduating senior year. Why
yeah.
was that?
I
Were
hated
you
school.
was school? Okay, yeah, me
School, I
too.
could not apply myself. I I did okay grades through school, but I just did not do real well. And I had a reading
Okay, so it
deficiency.
wasn't a
Yeah,
okay.
I had a reading deficiency from the third grade on. I would not read. I could not read. I wouldn't. It was terrible, and I barely passed everything that I went through in school. And yeah, so high school was just another thing. I missed more days than I was there. We were fishing or skipping school a lot. It just wasn't. I did not like high school. You know, first of all,
Now
I
were
liked
you
playing sports because I used to play sports when I was in the little town of Goldendale. We moved
hmm
to Yakima, which is, you know, 10 times bigger than the school I was. So I applied to play football because I got to play football at the little school, but I did I got cut and I didn't know what that meant. You can't play. What do you mean I can't play? They only had so many positions there and you didn't make it. I was too little. And
Oh
so I didn't
wow.
play football. So I got angry over that and I met some guys that were really into cars and so I got into cars. And so that's what we did. We made fast cars. Oh, well,
So so you
we made
so you
old
weren't
jalopies.
so you weren't 11 credits behind because you were a troublemaker. You just didn't like school and skipped it.
Right, right.
That's not too bad. So, well, okay, I have a question. Is Mrs. Corky Claus, is she in the room?
No.
Okay, let's talk about the first wife, you don't want to make the second one mad.
That's
So
okay.
how did you
She's
meet
listening to
you said you
podcasts.
well, it's a little bit different when you watch it than when you get to hear it in real time, but talk to me about talk to me about the first wife. You know, well, you said she was your high school. You guys met in high school. What was that
Yep.
like? How long were you guys together? Um, yeah,
Yeah.
talk to me about that relationship and how did it work through the
Glad you
Coast
brought
Guard?
that up because that's a very important part of my story. Is this was my high school girlfriend. I loved her to death. I worshiped the ground she walked on. And I said, I'm going into the service. And she said, okay. And then while not too long after I got out of boot camp, I'm on the ship heading to Kodiak, Alaska from Seattle, because that's where it was being worked on in Seattle. And it was heading back to the base. And while I was on there, I got a Dear John letter from her saying that she wanted to move on and no longer wanted me and her and I to be
Oh
together.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. So it was crushing for me, absolutely crushing, because I couldn't just get up and go see her and try to fix the thing. Uh, I was in the service, I couldn't leave. So that kicked my butt pretty hard. Kicked my butt pretty hard. And so, but I moved on and then once I was up in Alaska and I had put a year in the Coast Guard, they said you got 30 days leave. And I says, I'm going to go and get my girlfriend back. So I came back and got my girlfriend back. I said, I'm going to marry you. And that's just the way it's going to go. And she agreed. And she thought that was so heroic, I guess. I don't know. Because
Yeah,
I was
you
in
went back, you got
uniform.
your
What was
girl.
the big deal? Huh?
Oh, so you showed up like that.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I was proud Coast Guard guy, man. Everybody wore their uniform then. It was not acceptable back in the 60s because of the war. The only way I can say it is a lot of the hippies back then, they were against the government and war. And I mean, it was rioting and it was a mess back
Yeah,
in the 60s. I remember being when our ship went to Hawaii that we were getting kicked and spit on because we were in the service. And when we had our uniforms, that's just the way we went to
yeah.
town. And they it wasn't the welcome that they get now when they went to Iraq and all those other places.
Hmm.
People were horrible to the servicemen then, and I think they're trying to make up for that now. But it was a different world then. So when I come
Hmm.
back, I said we're getting married, and I asked her to marry me and got a ring, and she agreed, and we got married. And she
So how
came
long were
into
you
the
guys together?
3
How
years.
many kids? Okay.
2 years, excuse me. We were together and then got married a couple years after that. In 1974 is when we got married. I'd been 2 years in the Coast Guard then, and she moved to after I was transferred off the icebreaker in Kodiak. I got stationed to Elwaka, Washington, and that's when we decided to get
Oh,
married. And
wow.
then we got a place in Elwaka, Washington, and I was 20 years old and she was 18, and we started our life.
So how long were you guys married? What were the ups and downs in that relationship? Did you guys have any kids together?
Yeah, yeah.
What was that all about? Because you
I
did
went
because you're only you were only 20, and we got a lot of
right,
time to catch up on.
right. I was 20, and then 22, I got out of the service. So we were married, went to Oaxaca. I stayed in the service then I decided to get out and move back home. And when we moved back home, uh, she got pregnant with our first son, Greg. And then we had another son, Aaron. And yeah, they were we were together 7 years. And on the seventh year ish, um, I decided that rodeoing was more important than family, and I started drinking then.
So so let's back up before we get to the rodeo stories. What was your reaction like when you found out the first time you were going to be a father? And what was that moment like for you?
I was absolutely scared to death.
Hmm.
Like most fathers, how can I be a father? I'm still a kid. I still, you know what I mean? But once Greg was born, then it was all over. I knew, you know, it was,
And
time to knuckle
what's
down.
the age difference between the first two kids?
3 years.
Okay.
3 years.
And so you just hit on the you kind of just briefly hit on the topic that I think at least when me and you talk, in private, I think that this is like this next part of the conversation is always that pivotal moment, or this is the part of the conversation that most people will hear all the time, or I feel like it's kind of where you kick off your this is Corky story. So talk to me about Corky the rodeo clown. Well, actually, what we never addressed is Corky. Um, how did you get the name Corky? And then let's go into rodeo. Because now that I'm
Okay.
realizing, um,
Yeah, yeah.
no one knows why you're Corky.
Right. When I was 2 days old, my aunts named me Corky because my biological dad, they named me after my biological dad. And because of the rape thing, they did not want to call me after my biological dad's name. So that they said, we're going to call you Corky. And from then on, it just stuck, unless you were
Yeah, I
my
mean,
banker or my doctor.
you're definitely a Corky. I think the name is befitting of you.
All
All right,
right.
so talk to me about the rodeo life. How did you get into rodeo after the Coast Guard, and why was the rodeo more important than family at the time?
Right. Um, you know, there was a moment in my life that my first wife and I were not as close as and did not realize it. I did not realize that I was unhappy as I thought I was, and because our communication wasn't that good, we didn't communicate well, And there were some things on her side, like the lack of communication. We couldn't talk things out. She would just clam up, and we couldn't talk things through. She would just clam up, and she would lock up. I remember sitting in the car for 2 hours, saying, "I'm not moving until we get this talked out," and she wouldn't talk to me. I gave up after 2 hours of trying to get her to talk to me. So
Yeah.
with that, I don't know. There was some fault of hers too, and with that, the lack of communication happened, and we weren't as together as it should have been. So I went out a couple of times and started going to meeting my cousin or somebody at the bar, and we would just have a few drinks. And at that time I'm 25 years old, and that's you still you were either hunting, fishing, drinking, or camping and drinking. And I just started developing a pattern of drinking. And then my cousin said, "Why don't you come and help me at a rodeo?" He was clowning rodeos then. He said, "Why don't you come and help me, because my other guy can't make it?" I said, "Sure." And after the first rodeo I said, "This is what I want to do the rest of my life." And that's what I
Wow.
did.
What
Uh,
about the rodeo got you going?
I like the thrill of running around bulls and being able to do it. I like the attention that I got from it. Uh, I was raised around farming, ranching most of my life, so I knew that world a little bit at the time, but I had no idea how popular I was getting in that world, and the attention that I started getting from the ladies and from everything else. But the drinking went along with it. So there was a time that I had actually made the decision that I wanted to be away from my wife. So I went and lived with my cousin for a while. He was single too at the time. And that's all we lived and did was rodeo. That's all we lived and did. But I remember there was a time my two boys, they were 6 and 3, were hanging onto my legs saying, "Don't go, Daddy, please don't go." And
Mhm.
that's when my drinking really got worse, because I I really let them down by not trying to work through it and working it out. And I always go back to that time, to when the decision that I made wasn't the right decision. It I made a very emotional decision, and it wasn't spiritual direction at all. It was a selfish, self-centered move completely. And I started leading a life of guilt and shame for that point on around my boys. And then it led
Mhm.
into my family, to where I wasn't around my mom, my sisters, my cousins, my family. And
So, so when I was talking with Michael, and I can't remember. I think maybe we were going to call this the naughty to nice list or something in that fashion. And when I seen it, and given all of our
too naughty, too
conversations,
nice. Too naughty,
well,
too
that's
nice.
well,
Naughty.
that's what we're calling it now. But
Uh-huh.
before, it was something about a nice or naughty list.
Okay.
And I remember looking at it, and I was thinking about all the conversations we've had about, your past life and your upbringing, and then I was taking into account um, all of our conversations about the moment we've been in the last, 2 weeks, as a team. And I thought, this is a guy who's literally been too naughty. If you let him tell it, if you let him tell his story, he was too naughty. And if you let me tell his story right now, he's too nice. And that's how I was like, too naughty, too nice. So what about the rodeo and being a drunk at the time, and um and leaving your family. Of course, we can all say that was too naughty, but what were those moments where you feel like, hey, I'm I'm really screwing up right now, and then what made you decide to get better, or what was the thing that kept it going too long? Um, so like, and I know you've been sober for 12 years, but how long were you not sober? And how long did it take you to finally realize, like, hey, I'm being a little too naughty or a lot too naughty?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Um, well, I started drinking when I was about 26 years old. Seriously drinking. Enough to where I was leaving everybody in a disaster trail behind me. Everybody. And I went for a lot of years without seeing my two boys. I went 9 years without talking to them.
Wow.
Too much guilt around doing that. Too much guilt around doing that. In that path, I remarried again, had two daughters, and I could go, I mean, into stories about that. But back in the 80s, it was a lot of cocaine and a lot of drinking, and another wife. And then going to, after 20 years of marriage there, um, destroying that one through drinking and drugging. Also, I mean, I'm skipping a lot of stuff, which is fine, but I want to get to the point to where after that, I traveled all over and I stayed single for 10 years trying to find myself. And it was 12 years ago when I was 56 years old that I went 57 years old. 57 years old. I said, I got to stop because I'm nearly homeless. I am homeless. I'm staying with family. Um, in between all that, I had some successes in life also. That was always when I quit drinking for a period of time. And I had some
Now,
successes.
define some of these successes. Like, what were they?
I became top salesman in different organizations. And with that, I owned my own car lot. Um, I count that as a
Okay.
success.
Yeah.
Um, there was, and being a top salesman, a top one, two, and three, you make really good money doing that. If you want to consider that a success, um,
Yeah.
financially, there were some stuff, but I wasn't really good with my money. So I ended up burning through it or whatever. I never accumulated anything or did anything more. I bounced around different jobs. I just was wandering. I was just trying to find myself. I didn't realize it. I was all over the place. But all through
And
that time, Joe, I was self-serving. It all had to be centered around me. It was horrible. It was absolutely thinking what I wanted was this and that. It was nothing like that at all. I mean, I didn't like who I was. I tried to be a good person. I tried to get some success. I was looking for everything outside when I was all tore up and broken inside. So
yeah,
there's nothing you can put together like that. That's not a recipe for success, is when you're all broken up inside trying to make the outside make you feel good inside. It's just not going to happen,
yeah. So
you know.
you are at this point, we are two marriages, four kids, a lot of alcohol, drugs, rodeos into your life. And the second marriage lasted a lot longer than the first. Why was that?
I didn't want to have to go through what I did the first one. And Colleen was a good mom and a good wife, and uh, but we were so different in certain ways. We lived two separate lives. She did what she liked to do, and I did what I liked to do. It wasn't, you know, you know. I hate for her to ever hear, but it was kind of a rebound thing from my first wife. You know.
She may have already felt that way sometimes. Women have a great intuition when it comes to things
Yeah,
like that,
I don't want
you
to take
know.
anything away from her because she was a great person. She still is to this day, and we still talk. But we don't talk. You
Yeah,
know,
well, when you got
uh,
kids with somebody, that sometimes you got to have a conversation or two.
right,
So,
right,
what was the moment? So I recapped all of that to say, what was the moment where you decided, hey, bro, you really, it's not even a make a small change or get it together. We all have these moments where we think, okay, I just need to put the bottle down for a moment and I'm okay. Or
right,
maybe I just need to give it a break, or I really have this situation underneath control if I make this small change. And then there's always this moment, where maybe you got more money. You put the bottle down for a second and you told yourself, oh, I'm good. And then the bottle's picked back up again. So when did you decide that, hey, I'm done drinking. I need to go sober. I'm ruining my life. Like, what was that very hard switch? Or like, what was the cold turkey moment for you?
right. Um, I was on the ranch with my cousin. I had uh moved in with them. We were making all kinds of big, grandiose ideas, but it wasn't working for them or me. And it was more or less, you got to go somewhere, Corky. You got to go. Okay. I don't know where I'm going to go. So a friend of mine said, I have this fifth wheel trailer that you can stay in for a while. And I was in that fifth wheel trailer looking for work, trying to find something that would work. And my friend come out to me and said, Corky, why don't you try the mission? And I went, what? No, why don't you look into the mission? That wasn't even on my radar. I had too much pride and ego that I would ever consider that.
Yeah.
And being resourceful as I am, I was going to figure out how to do it without getting away from them. They'd, it was time. It wasn't, I could see if somebody was staying me and it looks like, oh, this guy isn't moving very much, because I was so depressed. I was so down. I was so, coming out of a fog of alcohol. I didn't know what was the best thing for me to do. I had no idea. I was 50 some years old, destroyed. Look back at my life. I had just torched everything behind me, everything. And I said, I'll go check it out. So I went to the mission and said, I'd like to volunteer. I had the pride and ego was all there. I'd like to volunteer in the kitchen and check it out. And they said, sure, come on in. Yeah, I'd be happy to have you. So I was serving food and doing that. And then I was trying to figure out a place to live. Well, I had found a guy that would give me a job. He paid me for a couple weeks' work. I had $500. I said, I'm going to go find a trailer that I can live in and a place to put it. And I found the perfect trailer. It was a 20-foot trailer for $500. And she even threw in the shed that was next to it. And I moved it to this really inexpensive trailer park. It happened to be on a nice little lake. It wasn't the worst trailer park, but it wasn't the nicest. So I was okay with that. And it was in walking distance or bike riding distance to the mission. And it was near the church that I started going to. So there come to a point, once the trailer was in, I'm in the trailer, I'm volunteering at the mission, and I'm going to church. And I literally fell on my face and said, Lord, if you help me out of this, I will serve you with all my heart, soul, and might. And I don't know what that even means, God, but I will serve you. And what I heard is, serve my people. Serve my people. And I couldn't quit hearing that. It wasn't audible, it was in my spirit. Serve my people. And I thought that was so strange. And until I said, okay, all I'm going to do is go to the church and go to the mission and serve those guys in the mission. And then I had a year of recovery. Then I had 2 years of recovery doing that. They hired me at the mission to become the kitchen manager there. I had no idea how to cook, but he said, I'll show you. And so we started doing competitions with the guys at the mission that were living there and trying to get out. I mean, getting off the streets and stuff. And they ate some of the best food the mission could possibly serve. And I had wonderful Christian people around me to support me at that time. Plus, I had a great church I was going to. My life turned around. I was completely on fire for serving God and serving people. And that's all I did, is totally turned everything around. And then my family started to come back to me. People started to attract to me. And I found a passion for serving people at that point. And that's helping the alcoholic and the drug addict to recover. And
Wow.
that's what I did. Yeah.
So what was your newfound relationship with God like, and how did the church play a role? So it's easy to see from a kind of hand over foot working way how the missionary is was able to kind of help you on your road to recovery. But what role did the church play? What role did your relationship with God play? You just said something very interesting in that you just kept hearing "serve my people." So, was that the first time you felt that you heard God's voice? Like, what were these moments like for you as you,
No, I've heard his voice several times.
you made yourself a God-fearing man, so
Totally.
what was
I
that
didn't
like?
do it. That transformed my heart because he picked me. And that's what he does. He chose me, and I couldn't believe that he would choose me to do this job. After what I had just been through, after what I just put him through, after what I have put all these people in my life, my family, my kids put through, how could I possibly do that? How could I possibly serve God? And I didn't deserve anything as my life started to transform. It took me forever to believe that I deserved anything. And one of the first things is my middle son, my youngest son, I have two boys, so my youngest son said, "Yeah, Dad, I forgive you. We want you in our life, but don't mess up because I'm watching." And that's how we said it. Don't mess up.
Yeah,
I'm watching. I went, "Oh man, that's so cool." Yeah. So to this day, him and I have a wonderful relationship. Wonderful,
that's good.
you know. Yeah, yeah. And so but it was just I just really felt the need at that point. He put a spirit of service inside my heart that man, I would walk through that kitchen and the dirtiest, filthy men would be standing there stinking, rotten, drunk, whatever, and I'd have tears in my eyes as I hugged them. There's not a better feeling than that. Because finally I could give myself 100%. Finally I could give myself 100%. And it didn't matter who you are. Didn't matter what you had for me. Didn't matter how you could serve me. Because I had a love. God put a love in me for those men off the streets. And they felt it. And I have, thanks to God, with the transforming of my life, I have very many friends that were on the streets that have families and jobs and things working now in their life.
Yeah, that's pretty night and day to go from I was self-serving to now I'm serving God and his people.
Exactly. And that's how it can work for anybody. That's how it can work
Yeah.
for anybody. Because I only believe that God could transform me. Nothing else could. No one, no girl, no job, no amount of money, nothing changed my life like that. I used to roll in Escalades. That's how I roll, thinking I was all that. Well, I was riding a bike to church and a bike to the mission in January with snow,
Got humbled
cars
very
driving
quickly.
by with
Yeah,
slush, yeah, slush flying on me. But I was on fire. I was excited. I'm ready to get to church. I'm ready to get to the mission. I'm ready to pour as much as I can into these people. And what little
yeah,
bit I had inside, and then it just started growing and multiplying inside of me immensely, immensely. And God took all the damage that had happened to me and all the damage I did to make a huge impact in this world. We'll get to that story. You've seen that side.
yeah.
You've only seen that side of me, you know.
Right, yeah.
Right.
So, so, and I guess, and so I know we're kind of running out of time, but let's touch on that side of you a little bit. So, we've covered the rodeo, and we covered um the drunkenness and the being too naughty, and we are now on fire for God, but we still aren't Santa yet. So, you're on fire for God. You're serving God's people. You're giving back. You're by far a changed man, but you're still just quirky. So where does Santa come into play? How did you become Santa? I just seen a picture the other day of you with a gray beard and short hair. So I've seen what quirky looks like before Santa. Uh, how did you get there? Why Santa? Um, yeah, how did we get here?
um, well, while I was at the mission, working at the mission, uh, I met this lady. I had been 10 years single, and she had been 13 years single. And I made the decision that I was not going to have, once I started going to church and a mission, I made the decision not to be in any kind of woman relationship, no kind of relationship at all, you know, at all, because my picker was really screwed up. I was picking some of the, you know, they were beautiful women. They were hot rods, I called them, but they were, they were messed up. If the more messed up
Yeah,
they were, the better I liked them.
better. Yeah, where? Yeah,
But we were all caught up in the same alcoholic thinking and the drugs and whatever else. So what comes with that? But pure disaster, of course, because they're as
yeah,
messed up as I am. So I said, Lord, I am not going to be in a relationship. It's just me and you and the mission and church. You help me figure this out. You bring that right person into my life. And
yeah,
2 years later, at the mission, my wife now, I met Tracy, and she worked at the mission also. And I met her and said, yeah, I think this is the one, Lord. What do you think? Help me with this one. And I pondered,
yeah.
and she wanted to move a whole lot faster than me, but I was scared to death I was going to make the wrong decision because of my past. And it
Hmm.
just come to me that on a walk one day that I said, yeah, this is the one. And when I said this is the one, I said, we're not going to have any kind of unclean relationship. So I didn't kiss her for months because
Oh
I didn't
wow.
want it to go anywhere real quick. Oh, it drove her nuts. And of course, we didn't do the other thing. But also, I wanted to show
You
her
are a
children.
better man than me.
I show, we'll have that. That's a whole nother podcast, dude.
That one is.
So I I made that choice, and I wanted to show her children and my children what a good relationship, how it starts a good uh, uh, relationship, and how it should start off and be. And then we decided to get married, and we couldn't find the right date for all of our kids to be there, so we just went to Las Vegas and got married.
Santa Corky got married in Vegas?
Yes.
That is hilarious. I didn't know that one. That's funny. That
But
is befitting. That makes a lot of sense.
right. So yeah,
So
that's how.
where did when did you become Santa? What was that moment like? Why did you become
Oh,
Santa? And
why?
you're 70. You're on TikTok. Why are you on TikTok? Like,
Yeah. I'll back up to 7 years ago. We're just doing life normal. Um, I was doing a sales job. I sold solar products, solar electric and stuff. And I knew I was going to change the job. And I said, I want to grow my beard out because I used to have a beard as a young man. And at the time, I had a big mustache. That's about it. And so I decided to grow my beard out. And when it started growing out, started growing out all white. And I went, oh, that's interesting. Didn't think much of it. And then I really let it grow longer because that was kind of the style. And I started thinking, this is different. So my son, it was wanting to be an amateur photographer, a photographer. So he bought a fancy camera and brought it over and said, let's take some pictures of you in the Santa suit. Cause I used to do that when they were kids. And so I put the Santa suit on and so he could take pictures with our grandkids. And he took a couple of pictures and turned the camera around. He goes, Dad, I think you need to take this Santa thing more serious. That was 2017. And my wife, Tracy, heard that and she put that picture he took on an ad in our neighborhood app, and two people hired me instantly to come to their
oh,
house. And so I went to their house. And matter of fact, this year, the seventh, eighth year, something like that, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, eighth year, eighth Christmas, um, I was just at those families' house and I was in tears
oh wow.
uh,
So
because they showed me
how did you get
pictures.
on TikTok?
They showed me pictures of when I first walked through the door. It was the first house I ever walked through. It was just amazing. They had the video of the
Oh
first
wow.
house I ever walked in as Santa.
What was the difference between like when you seen the first Santa Corky video? When you looked at it, did you go, "Oh wow, this guy's not really that good," or what's the difference between you know how you look
The
back on your old work and you're like, "Oh wow, I really wasn't that good." So how did you feel when like you being yourself now, seeing yourself as a Santa the very first time? Like what did you
I
think of
did
yourself?
all right as soon as I opened the door. They opened the door, their phone was going, and I had my bells and ho, 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 and my bag over my pack. The only difference was I had a $69 suit and a pair of rubber boots mud boots, but they looked black and they were rubber mud boots. Now I wear a $3,000 suit
The difference. Yeah, there you go.
and a
It's
lot of
branding.
experience, right? Right. So yeah, so that was the biggest part, and that's when my life really started to change because not only had God started creating a man to serve people, but He even knew that my heart really wanted to go here because there once you profess to be a Santa and you let your beard grow like I do, you're always known as Santa and your heart changes. You become more, I want to serve. It's not just the children, it's the adults. I bring out the child, yeah, when people around me, the inner child comes out in anybody. And that's a big goal of mine. That's what I want to do is to bring that love, hope, kind, charitable, loving, warm Christmas out of everybody every day. I don't care if it's July 3rd, that's what I want to do. And that's what I work passionately about doing. And so I was a local Santa. I built quite a you know, quite a business, quite a following, it started going and just snowballing to where I couldn't see everybody. And I was busy from, November doing family photography through December, doing my corporate visits, family visits, and parades and commercials and stuff like that locally. And then my son said in 2022, Dad, in March, he said, why don't you go on TikTok as Santa? And I said, absolutely not, because I'm not a teeny bopper and I'm not showing my boobs. So that's how it was. And that's all I knew
Yeah, no,
about TikTok. But
I would say the same thing. Yeah.
and so I'm 68 years old at that time. And uh, I said, but then he showed me some of his feed. No, Dad, this is what I watch. And, he showed politics, dirt bikes, and welding. I mean, that's everything he watched. This is what I see. Go ahead and look at and I went, oh, that's different. And then he started telling me about the algorithm. What you start watching is what starts feeding you. So, and I kind of knew something about it because I'd been on Facebook and YouTube and
Yeah.
that kind of thing. And he said, just give it a try. Let's do a video. So we did a quick video in his living room. I mean, actually, his kitchen table. And we did put one video on, and it started getting a little traction, nothing big. I don't even know at the time what that meant. But then he said, now, okay. Then he called me, says, Dad, I think it's time to go live. I go, what? Yeah, go live like the other guys do. So, you can talk live. Holy cow. I was scared to death. And so I did go live, and I happened to let somebody come on. I don't even know how it was. And he was trying to raise money for his brother to go to rehab. And I didn't know what to do. And I'm nervous. Why is this guy coming on trying to raise money? And my son's on the phone. Get him off. Get him off. You don't want him on your live right now. He's talking about getting money from people. I'm scared. And finally, I just checked out. And then I decided that really freaked me out because I had no idea how TikTok worked.
Yeah.
We're getting a message from Michael. Okay, that's something else. So anyway,
Right. I was looking too.
then I decided to go back live again, and I went live and I started to do it consistent for the first few days. I just started seeing so many people. I'm learning how many people are watching, and there would be thousands of people watching me, just giving shout outs to kids. Hi, good to see you, Bobby, Susie, Kevin, Owen,
Yeah.
and it started to go from the first month at 125,000 followers a month. Whatever we were doing,
Wow.
at that time, it's not whatever, it's just what we started doing. I don't do it much differently. I add a few things that we've added through the time. And in 9 months, we had 1 million followers. And in 18 months, I had 2 million followers.
Now you are one of the top 20 live streamers on TikTok, top 10 in subscriptions.
Mm-hmm.
You're probably the oldest superstar on TikTok.
That's a good point, Joe.
I don't think you're doing too bad for yourself.
Probably. I've never looked at that.
What I think is so interesting is that a lot of times the story you just told, like, hey, my life wasn't together and kind of steamrolled, and then I got my life together. You don't have a lot of people who get their life together in their 50s, and then you don't have a lot of people who make this, especially in entertainment, where at 70 years old, you're just now starting your entertainment career, but you have a massive platform. A lot of people, first off, a lot of people can't build the platform you have at 25, you know? So for you to be 70, have built out that platform, still going, one, you've learned the technology. My parents are 56, and sometimes my dad just got on Twitter, and he doesn't even like he just gets he has the apps to scroll. That's it. Doesn't post, doesn't use them, can't tell you how they work. Um, my mom sometimes gets a little stuck on TikTok, so it's very easy. And even myself, I'm 27 years old. It took me probably 4 years to make a TikTok account and to start getting on TikTok. And I've seen that easily, even at my age, how easy it can be to disconnect from technology and get lost in the newness of technology and the platforms. So I could have very well, and there are still people my age who aren't on TikTok. They're only on Instagram, and they don't know how to use TikTok. They go the same thing you go, oh, I can't post on TikTok. It's just a bunch of little kids and it's goofy and there's little dances and there's boobs.
Mhm, mhm,
And it's that type of thinking that makes it so that the gap gets made. And then because, no one understands TikTok the way they understand Instagram if you're my age, unless you tried. So you've done something that even 30-year-olds don't do. And people who are very close to this generation of TikTokers won't do in terms of learn TikTok. So like what was that? Was there a curve for you in terms of learning the technology? Was it very easy? How do you stay up to date with the app and the technology? And why did you think that it was important for somebody your age to understand what the young people are doing and how their
mhm.
technology works?
Right. I'll tell you exactly what happened. I'll tell you exactly what happened. There was a day before I was on TikTok. There was a day before I was on just looking at YouTube, and if I needed to know how to fix something, I'd go to YouTube and figure that out and try to learn that. And you can get around that pretty easy if you just apply yourself. But I'm walking in the store one day and I saw myself looking down to the ground, walking slow. And I picked my head up and I said, "You're walking like an old man. Are you becoming an old man? You're becoming an old man. Stop it. Walk faster. Walk like you did when you were 30. Walk it out." And and to this day, you've seen me. I
Yeah,
walk it
you
out.
walk really fast, man. The moment your feet hit the ground, you're going. You are hard to keep up with.
Right. So, and I knew if I started walking slow, I'm going to be in a wheelchair pretty soon. I'm going to be sitting around fiddling with puzzles. I'm going to, no one's going to want to hang around me when I'm like that. So you just start walking faster. Well, that applied to everything in my life.
Okay.
No, you pick up more stuff. You bend over and pick up that stuff. Go pick up cigarette butts at the park or something. Just do, be more active. Stay active. Get going. Get you a bicycle. Well, I got an electric bike now, but anyway, that works though. But anyway, and so when it came to technology, I went, wait a minute. If I don't keep up with technology, I'm going to get left far behind on this. And I
Yeah.
think that's anybody and everybody gets so caught up in not facing their fears. What's holding you back? What's holding you back is that voice saying, no, you can't. No,
Yeah.
you're not able to do that. And you start justifying it. It's your lizard brain telling you to protect yourself always. But you're not going to go out and create the wheel. If you're with that attitude, you're not going to knock doors down. You're not going to be able to serve people. That is no way to serve people, is by not wanting to challenge yourself to do either exercise or technology. I'm not a big fitness guy. I don't get up in the morning and, run 5 miles anymore. I don't do that. I'm old. I hurt. I can't even trust a fart, nowadays. But so I have to be careful. But I said, I'm going to try to do this technology stuff. So my son helped me. My granddaughter helped me blow up some of my biggest views. And I have some with 5 point something million views, 2 million views. That was my granddaughter saying, "Grandpa, let's do this." I connected with the right people to get me to the right places. And I saw that I was making a difference in people's lives, and that pushed me. That put the wind under my wings and the fire under my ass to keep going and doing something. When I started seeing people reacting to me as Santa, but also as I came across your page at the right time in my life. I was I was contemplating suicide. I was contemplating this. I was not feeling good. Their lives were messed up. And just by coming into my lives and me being kind and loving and connecting and that, and I'm very proud of what God and I and my wife and my family have done as far as having a community of 2 million people now on TikTok that love me and will do, uh, it's just that we're connected more than any
Yeah,
community that I've ever seen on TikTok. I mean, they show up. I can this is my studio. Okay. Last night I said I'll be back in a couple 3 hours. I went and visited some families last night, and I went to the fire department and helped with Santa for the volunteer firemen and their families and stuff. And I was still live, but I was out doing stuff. There was still 200-300 people in my live because they love my community loves what we do. I I wasn't even
yeah.
here, and they were in here.
We
They
do
just,
we do have a we
oh,
have a very strong community. And with that being said, I'm getting a message to wrap this up because your community started to miss you a little bit.
right,
Um,
right.
so this isn't a standalone podcast episode. So um, we
Joe,
can
can you
end
kind
it.
of explain? Can you explain what this podcast is going to be like? Because I think you could do a better job explaining what to look forward to in this podcast.
Yeah,
Besides
and
me,
maybe yeah. So what to look forward to in this podcast is
yeah, yeah. In
we're
other
gonna get
words,
to
show
we're
the vision.
gonna
Why to come back? Why to come back? What's the vision of our podcast?
you want to come back to this podcast because you're gonna get to know Santa Corky. You're gonna get to know Corky, and you're gonna get to talk to some interesting creators, and you're gonna get to hear a lot of interesting stories about people who were just like this as the name of the podcast, too naughty or too nice. Um, everybody has a comeback story, and a lot of creators have stories that their audience doesn't get to hear. And the real reason why I would tell anybody to come back is come hear the truth and come hear about the person you're following outside of what you're seeing. So on your TikTok live, you're live as Santa, and when you're on TikTok, you're posting as Santa, and you're Santa Corky, but you're still embodying your persona or your stage character or that stage name. The same way that when I'm on TikTok, I'm embodying Joe Lewis, and I'm taking on that brand, and that means that people don't know that we had a good or bad day because we're helping somebody get over their bad day. People don't know all the mess we've gone through this year, 20 years ago, last year, because they only see what we put out for them to enjoy. And I think that this podcast is just going to um, allow people to get to actually know you, get to know us outside of um, the art and the work that we present towards them. So people don't understand why does he go live for so long? Why is he always giving back? Why is he so happy? Why is he always trying to spread joy and cheer and laughter? And if they heard your backstory, they wouldn't ask those questions. Maybe instead, if they knew why you did what you did, they'd ask, how can I donate? Or how can I become like him? Or how can I become sober? Um, and then a big push of this podcast as well on your end was you wanted to help people with their recovery because your recovery was so important to you.
Mhm.
And you know, you were able to find different things to grab onto for your recovery, including Santa. So for you, it's kind of like, if only one other person with the beard sees that, hey, put the bottle down, go pick up the red suit, take some pictures, go on TikTok, or maybe their platform is Twitch, or maybe their platform is Instagram. Um, and for you, is to not only be, light and inspiration in the Christmas spirit, but as a person. It's very easy um, to spread joy and cheer as Santa. What's not easy is showing people how you're going to do it as Corky and then helping somebody else do it out of their darkness. So it's easy to say, hey, Merry Christmas. Everybody's supposed to be happy on Christmas. What's not easy is saying, hey, I've been going through the same things that you've been going through. I've gotten out of it, and this is how you're going to get out of it. And this is
Right, Joe.
how, you know, eh,
I'm gonna jump in real quick because right now it's one of the loneliest times for people out there because they're not with family, or even if they're
yeah,
with family, they're not with themselves. This can be the worst time of the year for people. There's more suicide that happens at this time of the year. There's more drug addiction and alcoholism that flares up like flaming this time of the year because of the Christmas spirit of what they used to feel like when they were kids
hmm
and what life has turned towards them at this time. So my whole thing is to absolutely to be that person that has been through all the naughty stuff. And I say that lightly. I just don't like to say naughty. I was a horrible person. To come to the other side to say I can show you how to be the person that you would like to become. And I always tell somebody, you need God and you need another human being to help you get there. And if I could be that
yeah,
human being, we'll let God do his job. And then God has asked me to do my job. And I want to be that person to help you walk through that time. So keep coming back to get that lift that you might need at that time, because I'm going to be here. I'm going to be here to help you. And I promise you, I'll be here.
there's no better
Cut.
way to end the podcast. Santa Corky's going to be here.